Hi y'all, welcome back to my shop. Today we're not going to turn a great work of art, but we're going to turn this cute little pig. They're fast, they're easy, and they're fun. So let's get started. Alright, today we're turning a piece of red oak. It's about 2 inches by 2 inches square and 3 inches long, or if you're using a metric system, about 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter by about 75 millimeter. So let's go ahead and turn this tween centers. I use a spindle roughing gouge, never to be used on a bowl, anchored against my hip, and just quickly go to it. And before we go too far, I'm going to go ahead and mark the tenon. Sometimes I use a piece of wood that's close to 2 inches, and if I make it perfectly round before I do the tenon, of course you know what happens. I make it too small for a tenon. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that tenon now and then finish rounding it. Now I'll just come off the edge of that a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and put it in a scroll chuck. If you don't have a scroll chuck, of course, you could mount this this scrap on a faceplate. Just make it a little bit longer and be mindful of the screws. Alright, first thing I've got to do is I've got to remove the damage on the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that with a little bowl gouge. I could use a skew, I could use a spindle gouge, but a small bowl gouge does it faster. Coming in, bracing it, hold it until I got a shoulder. Take care of it. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back, maybe a 1/4 of an inch, and turn a nose. I'm going to switch to a spindle gouge. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference what size, whether it's 3/8 or a half. I think either one of them will do you fine. Now the shape of this is going to be almost a perfect sphere, so I'm going to measure the diameter and then transfer that in both directions. I get it from just behind the nose. And if you've watched me for a while, you know that pencil marks go away, so a lot of times I like to go ahead and just put a little part. Just enough to see it, it gives my eye something to shape to. I'm going to start in the middle of this sphere and just start rolling it over. That's as far as I'm going to go right now, because I want to leave as much mass on the left as possible. I'm looking up here. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and refine the nose just a little bit. I am going to have to switch to a little bit smaller spindle gouge. I'm going to use my detail gouge, which has a very shallow flute, just because I want to get just a bit of a concave there behind the nose. It's cove, so once I get to the bottom, I got to stop and go in the other direction. I'm out of the middle, just like scooping ice cream. I like it. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm going to just finish refining, go back to that little larger spindle gouge, refining that shape a little bit. Very similar to turning a big bead. Start on its back, rotate, lift, and move the handle way out to the right. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and sand this up, and I see I've got two different colors of wood, light and dark, which is fine. I just need to think about orienting that a little bit to what's going to be the top. So I'm going to have the top on the dark on the top and white on the bottom, and I can use these growth rings to kind of orient it when I'm marking where I'm going to drill the holes. But let me go ahead and sand that up first, and we'll come back. All right, let's talk about sanding just briefly. I've been slow to embrace this wet sanding or sanding with oil, but I'm trying it out, and I like what I see because it is keeping the sanding dust down. I use I'm playing with walnut finishing oil, but actually the cheapest thing seems to be mineral oil, and by the time you finish sanding it down, if you finish it with antique oil like I do, it's not going to interfere with it since the oils should be compatible. So that is keeping the dust down, and I'm just slathering it on here, put a little bit on the sandpaper as I go through the grits. In this case now I'm switching to 220, and it'll build up a slurry that'll fill the pores, and I think on this oak that's going to be very nice to fill those pores to give it a smoother finish. And you can see the slurry buildup. It's hanging on to all that what would be a fine dust. So I'm liking it. I'm liking this a lot. I got my sanding speed down. It's no more than about 600. Just so the sandpaper doesn't skip over any ripples or anything. Just keep it moving. Build up that slurry. Go down into that cove and hit the front. I want this front to be perfectly smooth when we get ready to put a couple of nostrils on it. Alright, let's sand it a little bit this way. I don't think it's going to be necessary. But we'll sand it with the grain as our final sanding. Okay, I'm definitely liking that. I'll be using that a lot more. And of course, Mike Walt and Carl Jacobson and San Angelo have been doing this for years, but I've been a little slow picking up on it, but I'm convinced now. Now, I want to orient this with the grain pattern with a dark up, and I'm going to just draw a line down through the center, and I've got to drill a couple of holes for the ears, and I'm trying to locate about where they are. Let me cut out those ears and then come back to this. Alright, we're going to cut the ears out of a scrap of thin leather. I got this great big bundle from Hobby Lobby, but wherever you can get scraps from, you can use an old belt, you can use a wife's old purse, but I know I'm going to get a lot of use out of this. I had a 40% off coupon, so it only cost me about $6, so it was quite a deal. So I kind of flip through here, and I see the colors are mostly black, so I'm going to take this one scrap of brown, and it's got a bunch of odd cuts out of it, but it won't matter because I'm only going to use a tiny little bit here for the ear. Now, you'll notice I'm using a cutting mat. This is a 12 by 18. I don't use this very often because I forget I have it. I bought it back when I was doing marquetry, but it's called a self-healing mat. It really does work well when you're cutting with a razor knife, so it's a handy thing. Now, I'm using what they typically call a craft knife, and I'm using a Fiskars knife. I went through, I bought it a long time ago back when I was looking at marquetry. I bought this really cheap set, and it's got, all these different blades and everything. The problem is it's a bad design. Every one of these has got this little piece of rubber here to hold it, and they just won't hold the knife blade. So this really was a waste of money. So I finally decided, okay, buy yourself a decent razor knife. And I did a lot of research, watched some YouTube videos before I settled on this Fiskars. Very inexpensive, but it's a very nice very nice knife. If you're interested in either buying this knife or the cutting mat, you can help support my channel by going to the my Amazon shop, and you'll find that in the description of this video, the link there. And so I'm just going to eyeball this and just kind of just cut out what looks like might be a good shape. And then the end of it's going to extend out, and it's going to be about an eighth of an inch long. This tip right here, an eighth of an inch rather across, because I'm going to drill an 1/8 inch hole. And then let me kind of take this over and see if this is a good size or if it needs to be a little bit wider. This is trial and error. The length is about right, but it needs to be a little bit longer. So we're going to come around and try it again. And then when we cut one, we can cut another one just like it. Okay, now that I got my 2 ears cut out, we're going to put it rough side to the outside. I'm going to set those aside. I've drawn one line through the middle, and now I'm coming back from the tip of the nose by about, looks like maybe 16 millimeter. I'm going to draw a line, circular line, to orient. It doesn't have to go all the way around, but enough to orient those ears on. And now I'm going to just come back with an awl and just kind of sight on one and mark it, and then I think I'm going to measure how far that is from, and it looks like about 18 millimeter. I do like metric when it comes to dividing in small measurements, even if I am from the US of A. Our way is not always the best way, I'll be the first to admit. Okay, so now let me put my awl away. Now I'm going to come in here with an 1/8 inch drill bit and just drill it in just a little bit, maybe less than 1/4 of an inch. Leaning slightly forward. If you go a little deep, won't matter, because it's going to be covered up with that ear. Alright, so I'm just going to put a little drop of thin CA. Okay, here's where my toothpick comes in handy, so to speak. I'm just going to stick that in there. Poke it down in there. That's a good thing. Alright, now I could drill 2 little small holes for the nostrils, but I find that using that birdcage awl, I've got a video on making these. These are really handy tools. So I'm going to orient those ears and that grain and that line so everything's lined up, and then I'm just going to come in here about halfway and just do that all. Come out here about what appears to be the same amount, and just pivot this, and I'm going to get a hole a little bit bigger than 1/16 of an inch. And because this birdcage awl's got these sharp edges, they will certainly cut a hole, and we can just rub that off a little bit. Get rid of those little flakes, and we got those 2 little holes. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and part this off. I probably should have glued those ears in off the lathe, but hey, we'll get those ears smacking around. Okay. Alright, now I'm simply going to bring this curve around and part it off. To do that, I'm going to use this detail spindle gouge, and I had to pull my tool rest back a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold those ears out of the way. I'll show you how we're going to handle that a little bit later, but right now we're just going to fold them back out of the way. That's how I solved my problem of putting the ears on at the wrong time. And you shape that sphere right around. Yep. You know, it'd help if I always have a hard time orienting my tape so it doesn't unfold on me. Let's try again. A little more room. Now we're going to use a flush cut saw just because it's a heck of a lot handier. We'll just take that and okay, we can sand that off without any problem. I promised you another trick with the ears, and here it is. We're going to dab just a little bit of CA glue under that ear to hold them down like that. Now if you want them sticking up, you can, but I prefer them to have them down, so we're going to do that with just a dab of glue. And almost glued my finger to it. Okay, the only thing we got left, we're going to come back, we're going to go over to the belt sander, and we're just going to sand off the bottom so it'll sit nice and flat. I just took a threaded glue block, or you can use a faceplate, put it on a piece of very nice, like Baltic birch, or in this case cabinet plywood. I don't think I had any Baltic birch, so this is good enough. True up the surface so it'll be flat, and put sandpaper on it. I'm going to get my other tool rest out. I haven't made a little table for it yet. Now we're just going to hold this thing in an orientation like this and sand it off a little bit. Going to go at a somewhat slow speed. It's running true again because I did surface it when I made it. I've got it going fairly slow, orienting the ear so it'll be flat with the nose sticking up just a little bit. And there you go. The other refinement we could make is I could, after I sand off the bottom, I could put a little hole here and I could do a little curlicue out of a pipe cleaner, which I'm planning on doing, but don't have any on hand yet. But there we go. You can see some other wooden figures for inspiration on my Pinterest board under Wooden Animals, Mike Peace. If you like this project, you might be interested in looking at the video I did some time back on wooden mice. They're also kind of cute. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll subscribe. I do a new wood turning tip every Tuesday and a longer video on Friday. I'm passionate about wood turning. I hope I inspired you to try something new or try something again. Y'all come back here.